So there's been a lot of debate, at least from what I've seen recently, about MSTY, and there's some people that say, oh, you should just buy and hold Bitcoin, it's a waste of time, who cares about the yield? And then there's also people that say, oh, well, you should just buy and hold MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is outperformed. And I think that the truth is definitely, it's just definitely not true. I think that there's some people that are lying. There's some people that are misleading you, and then I think that there's some people that just don't understand why people are buying MSTY. So I wanted to give my opinion on this. Again, obviously just my opinion. First things first, if you get value out of the video, please like, subscribe, check out those links below. I very much appreciate the support. So getting right into it here, let's just go over the price returns here and just get into it. And if you look at MSTY came out February 2024. So MSTY, if you were to reinvest dividends, is up 280%. Now the first thing that people say MSTY is only up 7.2% over that time. It's such a bad investment. Why are you buying it? And I think that's just an incredibly misleading argument because, for example, when someone compares the S&P 500 to T-bills, for example, nobody doesn't include the dividends or the payments from T-bills. So why would you consider it to be a legitimate argument to not consider the dividends from MSTY? So anybody that's not including the yield when it comes to MSTY price returns, I don't see how you can take them seriously. Now, these are people that I think they're right about a lot of the other stuff they say. I'm not saying that you should completely dismiss them entirely, but when you're looking at an investment that the primary reason for the investment is the yield, not including the dividends in the returns, you're just lying to people, or at the very least misleading them. So when you look at MSTY, they're up about 280% since inception. And if you look at them year to date, let's look at them year to date, let's look at them like that second week of January, and I'll show you in a minute here. So from January 13th, they're up 16, 17% roughly. The S&P is up about 2%. Let's compare them to MSTR, right? MSTR over that time is, if we go February of 2024, they are up about 315%. So MSTR has slightly outperformed MSTY over about the last year and a little bit. If you look at them year to date, it's too fine of an argument to go over exactly from January 1st. So we're going to go January, the same time frame. It's up about 21%. So long story short, it looks like over the long term, MSTR does outperform by a little bit. But if you compare to Bitcoin, MSTY is actually outperforming Bitcoin over that year and a little bit time. Obviously, MSTR is outperforming even more. So the long and short of it here is, I fully understand the argument that the Bitcoin maxis are saying, in that if too many people go away from like cold storage, or at the very least, holding your own keys, Bitcoin, that it's going to be bad for Bitcoin as a whole. I completely understand that. And I agree with it to a large degree, not entirely. My position is, in Canada and in the States and in a lot of other areas, you are allowed to invest a certain amount of money every year and have tax-free returns, or tax-sheltered returns, however you want to cut it. And in my opinion, at least to some degree, you're throwing away money by not at least contributing a little bit to that. And not only that, you still have to pay capital gains on Bitcoin. If capital gains taxes are abolished on Bitcoin, then that completely refutes that line of thinking. But until that happens, I think that and not to mention too, I think that it's good for Bitcoin, at least to some degree, to support the micro strategies of the world, because the only way that adoption is going to grow long term is if corporations and institutions, your pension fund, like, it's only going to grow long term if corporations continue to adopt, if the ETFs continue to adopt. Now, there's only so much that the average Joe can buy. I mean, obviously that, the vast majority of the population still doesn't own it, but when you look at the growth of an asset, one of the easiest ways for an asset to grow is for institutional adoption. So I think that the truth here is somewhat in the middle. Personally, I don't think that it's a good idea to have the majority of your wealth in ETFs and corporations, traditional stocks. I think that the majority should be in Bitcoin, but I think that, a significant minority, absolutely, I think it's okay to have it in MSTY, in MicroStrategy. Like that's what my plan is, right? My personal plan is probably, I don't know, 50-ish% to be in, probably a little bit over 50% to be in Bitcoin, and the rest to be in, probably the majority of the rest to be in MSTY and MSTR, and then maybe 10 or 20% to be in your ETFs and traditional stocks. Maybe 25 or 30% in traditional ETFs or stocks. Obviously it's gonna move around a lot because Bitcoin is quite volatile, right? When Bitcoin is up a lot, it's going to be a higher percentage, and when Bitcoin is lower, it's going to be a lower percentage. But the long and gist of it here is, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. And not to mention, too, I think that there's a lot of these people that are, crapping on the people that are buying MSTY, saying, oh, why do you need your stupid yield? A lot of these people are either, very wealthy, or at the very least modestly wealthy. And when your net worth is high enough to where you don't really legitimately have to work anymore, it's kind of hard to look at the your average Joe making 50, 60 grand a year, saying, telling them, you're stupid for wanting to buy MSTY. Like, for a lot of these people, like you put 50 grand in MSTY, you're getting 50, 60 grand a year, at least based on current yields. Now, I don't think that's going to last forever. I think that that's a fair argument, but I think that it's very clear that Bitcoin is going to be quite a bit more volatile than the stock market for the foreseeable future, and MicroStrategy probably will be more volatile than that for the foreseeable future. So when you can put 50 or 100 grand into an investment and retire off that, it's kind of hard to pass up, especially when you're stuck in the rat race, right? It's pretty easy when your net worth is 10 or 20 million dollars to be like, hey, to go to the guy making 50 grand a year, being like, hey, you're kind of stupid for buying MSTY. That's just my opinion. Obviously, I know that there's people that are going to disagree with that, and I understand that, but it's pretty hard to look at the average Joe and tell him you're stupid to buy MSTY when you can retire off so little of it, right? Just my opinion on there. But again, I think that the argument that you should have 100% of your liquid net worth in cold storage, or at the very least private Bitcoin, I don't necessarily agree with that. I can certainly understand that argument. The one argument that I certainly would disagree with is you should definitely not have at least a decent chunk in cold storage Bitcoin, right? I think that you need probably 50% is probably where I would draw the line as being the minimum. And I don't see how anyone can call me crazy for saying that. I mean, a lot of people are going to be like, man, that's way too much. So I definitely don't think that the maxis can be completely, they're going to be a little bit upset, but the people on the other side are also going to be a little bit upset. That's just my opinion, right? That's just my opinion. But the main point I wanted to get at here is, I think that people saying that, look at MSTY, it's had these horrible price returns, they're really not being honest with you, because nobody is buying MSTY for price returns. People are buying MSTY for the yield. And that's like the people who say, oh, Bitcoin doesn't have earnings, why would you buy Bitcoin? Bitcoin doesn't have a yield, why would you buy Bitcoin? The point of Bitcoin is not to get earnings or a yield. So that when the people say, don't buy MSTY. It doesn't have these crazy good price returns. Well, you're either deliberately misinterpreting what people want, or you're just straight up lying. Right, and I refuse to believe, like, the people that own Bitcoin, they're overwhelmingly, I wouldn't say all the time, but they're overwhelmingly some of the smartest people out there. And I refuse to believe that you can't grasp such a simple concept. Like, it's not that hard to understand. And again, I don't mean that to be condescending or to be rude. I'm in a lot of ways it's a compliment, right? Like, I genuinely believe that the people that are buying Bitcoin are some of the smartest people on the planet, because only 1 or 2% of the population, give or take, owns Bitcoin, and eventually it's going to be 20 or 30%, right? So we are still very early. So again, my personal strategy in life, when it comes to my finances, I'll be totally straight up here. 100% transparent, is to get enough, primarily MSTY and MicroStrategy, but probably, I don't know, 20-ish, 30% will come from other stocks and ETFs. My goal is to retire as soon as humanly possible. A lot of people would say, oh, you just buy Bitcoin and wait. I understand that. But again, I want to live fairly comfortably in the meantime. I don't think that just straight up buying Bitcoin, that's going to happen as soon as that happens. And, another thing that not a lot of people are talking about as well is that, let's say you put 50 grand or 100 grand into MSTY, all of a sudden you're getting, probably on the low end, I don't know, 4,000 a month. On the high end, 10, 11, 12,000 a month. There's nothing saying you can't recycle, $500, $1,000 a month of that back into cold storage Bitcoin. I think that that's also a brilliant strategy. Selling covered calls on MicroStrategy and taking some of the dividends from MSTY and buying cold storage Bitcoin. I think that is an absolutely genius strategy. Just my opinion, right? Just my opinion. Everything here, my opinion. So anyway, I've gone on long enough. I could make this longer if I wanted, but I don't want to make it too long. So that is what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, comment. Check out those links below, like I said, and stay tuned for more.